After 9 days, 1 hour, 32 minutes, and 15 seconds of precise space choreography, Artemis II successfully completed the first manned mission to the moon in over half a century. On an unforgettable journey around our natural satellite, the 4 astronauts aboard the Orion capsule had unique views of the so-called far side of the moon. You're watching Olhar Digital, the largest science and technology community in Brazil. Leave a like to support our work and subscribe to our channel. Help us reach the milestone of 1 million subscribers. We're almost there. Aboard the spacecraft were NASA astronauts Reid Wiseman, Victor Glover, and Christina Koch, along with Jeremy Hansen from the Canadian Space Agency. On Friday, the anticipation was for the return, which Olhar Digital broadcast live. Shortly before landing, around 8:30 p.m. Brasilia time, an important step. The crew module separated from the so-called service module. Soon after, the capsule with the astronauts began to feel the intense friction of the atmosphere, entering the most critical phase of the descent, while the service module harmlessly disintegrated in Earth's atmosphere over the Pacific Ocean. Approximately 1 minute and 20 seconds after the start of re-entry, peak heating occurred, with the capsule reaching up to 2,760 degrees Celsius. During the descent, the spacecraft was enveloped by an intense layer of glowing plasma, which temporarily interrupted communications with Earth. A silence that was expected, but is always critical for the teams here on the ground. After a challenging re-entry into the atmosphere, the spacecraft landed with the help of parachutes in the Pacific Ocean, off the coast of California in the United States at 9:07 p.m. as predicted by NASA. Afterward, astronaut Reid Wiseman reported that all 4 crew members were in good condition. Around 10 p.m., rescue teams approached the Orion capsule and opened the hatch to begin checking the status of the crew. The mission was officially concluded at 10:34 p.m. Brasilia time, with the removal of all astronauts from the capsule. Next, helicopters were deployed to transport them to a ship. The crew left the helicopters walking, demonstrating composure and the complete success of the entire operation. In an interview shortly after landing, NASA Administrator Jared Isaacman said that Artemis II is just the beginning of a much larger comeback. Artemis II? I can't imagine a better crew than the one on Artemis II, which has just completed a perfect mission. We're back in action, sending astronauts to the moon and bringing them back safely. This is just the beginning. We'll resume this activity frequently, sending missions to the moon until we land there in 2028 and start building our base. The recently completed mission has made history for several different reasons. It was the first manned mission of the 21st century to fly over the moon. The last trip had been with Apollo 17 back in 1972. The astronauts also broke the record for the furthest distance traveled. The Orion capsule reached about 407,000 kilometers from Earth, surpassing the Apollo 13 record. The maximum speed reached was 39,693 kilometers per hour, just below the Apollo 10 mission record. Another important point is the diversity of the crew. The first woman and the first black man went beyond low Earth orbit with Artemis II. Let's take a look at the timeline now. Let's rewind and talk about it from the beginning. NASA launched Artemis II on the 1st of April. This was the first available date in this month's launch window, as the previous windows in February and March couldn't be used due to delays in the mission schedule. Of course, with the live broadcast from Olhar Digital, the 98-meter tall Space Launch System super rocket, or SLS, with the Orion capsule on top, took off from the Kennedy Space Center in Florida, marking the start of the long-awaited first manned flight of NASA's new space program, aimed at lunar exploration and deep space. 3, 2, 1, booster ignition, and liftoff. The crew of Artemis II, now bound for the moon. Humanity's next great voyage begins. From the glamorous images to the images of the struggle. That's right, on the very first night, a challenge arose, a technical problem in the ship's bathroom. A warning light on the panel indicated a failure in the toilet controller, requiring direct intervention from the astronauts, with guidance from Mission Control in Houston, of course. At the same time, the crew had another very different and less bothersome inconvenience. Outlook, Microsoft's famous email software, simply stopped working. Without the possibility of on-site technical assistance, more than 70,000 kilometers from Earth, the astronauts had to deal with the failure themselves, following NASA's instructions. An important moment on the second day was the so-called translunar injection burn. Let's translate that. It's a maneuver that fired the spacecraft's engines to put it on a path from Earth to the Moon, adjusting the speed and trajectory to ensure the capsule reached the natural satellite safely. After the adrenaline, the pace on board Artemis 2 changed. While the first 2 days were dominated by critical maneuvers, the third brought more curious and also practical activities. One of the exercises was cardiopulmonary resuscitation in zero gravity. Unlike on Earth, where body weight helps to press on the chest, in space, any little push makes you float. Therefore, it's necessary to learn specific positions and techniques to maintain the procedure's effectiveness. The crew also tested the ship's medical equipment, like thermometers, ensuring everything was working perfectly in case of any need, which didn't happen, thankfully. On Sunday, the crew tested that orange spacesuit for the first time in space. This uniform was used in the launch and re-entry of the spacecraft, and could also have been useful in emergency situations. It would guarantee oxygen and protection for the crew for up to 6 days if the Orion capsule lost pressure in space, which thankfully didn't happen. Right in the first minutes of Monday, the 6th day of the Artemis 2 mission, Orion entered the so-called sphere of influence of the Moon. At this point, lunar gravity surpasses Earth's, thus starting to dominate the spacecraft's trajectory. On this historic day, Orion performed a lunar flyby, passing by the far side of our natural satellite. The crew on board had unprecedented views, observing regions that no human being had ever contemplated up close. Even before this unforgettable feat, the day was already full of strong emotions, with the astronauts being awakened by a message recorded by NASA veteran Jim Lovell, who passed away in 2025. A participant in the iconic Apollo 8 missions, which orbited the Moon for the first time, and Apollo 13, which until then had reached the greatest distance from Earth ever traveled by humans, he left special words for the Artemis 2 crew.
Hello, Artemis 2. This is Apollo astronaut Jim Lovell. Welcome to my old neighborhood.
And that was just the beginning. During the afternoon, the mission surpassed the record of about 400,000 kilometers distance from Earth reached in 1970 by Apollo 13.
Today, for all humanity, you're pushing beyond that frontier. We will continue our journey even further into space before Mother Earth succeeds in pulling us back to everything that we hold dear. But we, most importantly, choose this moment to challenge this generation and the next to make sure this record is not long-lived.
10 minutes later, the astronauts officially began their lunar observations, which extended over about 7 hours. Jeremy Hansen informed mission controllers that the Artemis 2 crew would like to officially name 2 craters on the Moon. One of them is to be named Integrity, in reference to the name of the mission's Orion capsule. The other, Carol, in honor of Commander Wiseman's late wife, who died of cancer in 2020.
A number of years ago, we started this journey in our close-knit astronaut family, and we lost a loved one. Her name was Carol, the spouse of Reed, the mother of Katie and Heather.
The astronauts were seen wiping away tears, and at the end of the message, the 4 embraced while Mission Control confirmed the naming of the craters over the radio in the presence of Wiseman's daughters and family, who were in the Mission Control room during the lunar flyby. Late Monday night, as Orion passed behind the Moon, radio signals with Earth were temporarily blocked, and communication was cut off for about 40 minutes, as NASA had already anticipated. There were no scares. Just before the loss of contact, the astronauts witnessed what's called an Earth set, or the setting of the Earth. The image of this moment of farewell to the planet was published by NASA on social media the next day, joining the gallery of the most iconic records of human space exploration. During this period without communication, the spacecraft reached its closest approach to the moon at an altitude of about 6,546 kilometers. Shortly after, the astronauts reached the farthest point from Earth in the entire mission, 406,771 kilometers, the greatest distance ever traveled by humans. To wrap up the most important day of the mission, not counting the launch and return to Earth, the Artemis II astronauts had the opportunity, get this, to observe a total solar eclipse from an unprecedented perspective. They were the only 4 people to witness the phenomenon. That's because the eclipse wasn't visible from Earth, as the positions of the sun, moon, and planet wouldn't allow it. But from Orion's point of view, the moon completely covered the sun, offering the crew a unique and exclusive spectacle. During the lunar flyby, the crew documented impact craters, ancient lava flows, and surface fractures, which will help scientists study the moon's geological evolution. They monitored differences in color, brightness, and texture across the terrain, and also observed meteorite impact flashes on the dark lunar surface during the eclipse, according to NASA. The flashes were brief but intense, and could only be observed thanks to the Orion capsule's proximity to the surface. After such moving moments that will forever stay in the memories of the 4 NASA astronauts and all of science, it was time to head back home. The Orion capsule left the lunar sphere of influence on Tuesday afternoon. At that moment, the spacecraft, let's say, stopped being pulled mainly by the moon's gravity, officially starting the journey back to Earth, which began to exert the greatest influence on its trajectory. 3 days later, finally, the return home. For Marcelo Zurita, astronomer and columnist for Olhar Digital, the success of Artemis II brings confidence for the future after so many delays.
I think Artemis II, it has more or less the same function as those first successful flights. Successful manned flights, the Apollo program, the Mercury program, which restore the confidence, of the public in NASA and of the astronauts themselves, of the team itself, of the Apollo program, and now, of the Artemis program. We have been following this with a lot of skepticism, due to successive delays. Yeah, we had some time ago statements that were strange, for us to see from NASA itself, saying that the Artemis program was going to be delayed because SpaceX hadn't made the mode, the lunar descent module yet. So kind of dragging their feet, pushing the problem forward. The success, 100%, let's say, of Artemis II, it restores a bit of the confidence, of the engineers, the astronauts, and the public itself, in the Artemis program and in NASA.
But what about the future of the Artemis II program? What can we expect? The Artemis III mission, which would originally mark humanity's historic return to the lunar surface, was redesigned. Now, it will focus on a complex training flight in Earth orbit, scheduled to occur in 2027, thus serving as a final test for the landing systems that will be used later. With this restructuring, the long-awaited landing of astronauts on the moon was transferred to the Artemis IV mission, scheduled for early 2028. In the same year, the agency plans to also launch Artemis V, which should perform the second descent to the lunar surface of this new era. But it's an ambitious plan. In addition to the human return to the lunar surface, the Artemis program as a whole is part of a broader strategy to enable interplanetary missions in the future. The moon would be a testing ground for essential technologies, such as, for example, use of local resources, prolonged life support, and also operations in extreme environments. If the Apollo era represented the moment when human beings showed that they could reach the moon, the Artemis missions represent the beginning of the phase in which we will learn to live and work on it. In other words, human beings stop being mere visitors and become, in fact, residents of our natural satellite, so to speak. At least in theory, right? Even if the most ambitious plan doesn't come to fruition, we've already taken a very important step in space exploration.
I don't know if it's to establish a colony or to create a base, an outpost for trips to Mars, but at least for us to step on lunar soil again and suddenly explore this return to the moon, I'm certainly much more confident today than I was 2 weeks ago.
If you want to know more about the future of space exploration and about the differences between the Artemis and Apollo missions, check out another video we made, which is right here in the description of this video you're watching now. And if you like this content, leave a like, subscribe to our channel, and help the Olhar Digital community grow even more. Guys, we're very close to reaching our first million, the first million subscribers here at OD. I'm counting on your help, and I invite you to be part of our community. The future happens here first.